Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Welcome back, Wolf Pack. It is Fox Trevize here. I have a few guests tonight, which include myself and also the voices in my head that sound suspiciously like Direwolf. And, of course, all of you guys. Direwolf regrets not being with us tonight. He said his reason this time was, quote, definitely not because I'm going to Wisconsin to liberate Kyle Rittenhouse. Definitely not that. That was a weird thing for you to ask me. Why would you even think that's where I'm going? Are you recording this? That was a quote from Dyer. He then hung up for some reason. It was a very, very strange call. And yes, Dyer, of course, I record all of our calls. Why wouldn't I? But regardless of where Dyer is or isn't, I am here. And as you can probably see by the titles, we are going to be talking about the walkaways, which if you don't know what that is, I'll get into that shortly. Also tonight, before I get into our sponsors, who we thank very much. Tonight I have a rather long script to get through, but I don't have any visual aids. So if you would like to listen to this as more of a podcast, feel free to do other things while you listen. There is not going to be anything interesting going on screen. I apologize for that. Definitely Dyer's fault. Thank you, Thundra, for the lemon. I much appreciate it. Okay, so before we go any further, though, I would like to thank our sponsors, which apparently is Thundra, who donated a lemon. Much appreciated. The show is only possible because of viewers and lemons, so we thank you for that. We'd especially like to thank those of you that donate financially, including Kaylette, Ori Main, Nathan Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke Garcia, Thundra Erican, who is female and just gave us a lemon, The White Lion, who is a lion, Timberwolf, who's a wolf, and of course the guy who started it all, Direwolf, who is definitely not kicking indoors to a Wisconsin corrections facility as we speak. Money is not the only way that you can give, though. We also appreciate you liking and subscribing to us on DLive, Twitch, and YouTube, and we especially like when you share out links to the channel on any social media you happen to find yourself on, as we have no algorithm to do this for us. Let me see. Okay. So I'll let you guys keep me appraised in chat if there's any glitches. I think we're doing well. Aloha Anissa on YouTube. Nice to see you. Okay. So, like I said, there won't be any visuals tonight, so feel free to do other things while you listen to my sultry tones. The walkaways. Who are the walkaways? So the walkaways, that is basically my name for them, but I believe that they self-identify as disaffected liberals. The hashtag walkaway and hashtag walkaway from Democrats movements are associated with the idea of leftists, liberals, and Democrats walking away from the Democrat Party. Some of them will become non-voters, just completely disenfranchised and not feeling particularly connected to anything. Hold on a second. And then some of them are going to be Republican voters or vote third party. It's not universally a blue to red transition, but for the most part, the walkaways that I will be talking about tonight are going to be the walkaways that are moving from being liberal, being leftist, being a Democrat to being a conservative or libertarian or moving to the right. Again, when you're walking away from the Dems, there's a couple different places you could go. I'm mostly focused on the pipeline of that blue to red transition. There are supposedly many thousands, maybe millions of walkaways that have either already done so or are predicted to do so soon. So if there's going to be this massive influx, and there may have already been a massive influx of new people onto our side of the spectrum, onto our side of the political spectrum, then I think we ought to do a little due diligence on them. Spoiler alert, which you guys will find out throughout the rest of this presentation. I am not a big fan of the walkaways. There's a few reasons for that, and by the end of this, my recommendation is that everybody be wary of them. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we oust them from our side. They are certainly welcome. We should not be pushing them out or harassing them or anything like that. Far from that. It is, but like I said, I do want us to be wary of them, and I'll go through how I think that we should handle the walkaways as they migrate over to our side of the political spectrum. Eventually, certainly I hope so. Eventually, the current political turmoil will be over. I know it seems like it never will be, but someday it will. Whatever the conclusion to it is, the current political turmoil, it cannot continue at this level in perpetuity. It's just not possible. So, of the many ways that the political turmoil will stop, I don't know how we're going to get through it. I don't know what the end result is going to be, but I do know that there will be an after. There will be a time after this when it's calmed down. And you're like, man, 2020s were crazy, and I'm glad stuff's fine now. There will be a time after this. My assumption is that the side of good will win, that conservative liberty will win out against the authoritarians and the communists. If we don't, well, none of this really matters. So, instead of just saying, well, maybe we'll just lose and then just ending the stream here, I'm going to go ahead with the assumption that we win. And that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about the walkaways. The walkaways are, for the most part right now, in the immediate future, a lot of them are going to go pull that lever for Trump, which is great, and I'll get into more of that later. But in the long term, these former leftists, these former Democrats, if they are going to be on our side of the political spectrum in the long term, then after the current political turmoil is over, we need to decide what are we going to do with them and how should we integrate them into our ideology moving forward. I'm talking about on the order of the next few decades. And again, if there is going to be a significant flux of these people, on the order of hundreds of thousands to millions to maybe tens of millions, walking away and coming over to the big tent conservative side, the big tent right, these walkaways will have enough people over here that they will be gaining influence on our side. And my concern is that they will have enough influence that they will just recreate the monster that they just fled. Maybe it doesn't happen next year, but maybe, again, looking at this in the long run, what does this look like 30 years from now? Is 30 years from now, do the people who walked away in the 2020s, did they recreate the communist hell in 2050 because they came over to our side and we didn't manage them properly into the ideology? That is my fear and my concern, and I'm going to go through and justify that over the I don't know how long this presentation is going to be, but it'll be a while. Let's see here. Okay, so again, mostly concerned that they would corrupt our side to the extent that we wouldn't have anywhere to run. One of the speakers at the RNC this week, one of the more popular ones, was a Cuban escapee. He had a very heart-wrenching story of how he escaped communist Cuba after the communist revolution and made it to America. He warned, and I've heard other Cuban refugees give similar warnings. He wasn't unique in needing to escape communism and being happy that America was there. Cuban refugees are, up until very recently, were one of the most reliable conservative voting blocs in the entire country. As a demographic, they were the most reliable conservative voting blocs because they knew what it was that they were escaping, and they didn't want to see it again. So this guy who spoke at the RNC, he still remembers that. He hasn't forgotten that, or he's not part of the next generation that didn't listen to their parents about how bad communism is. And he warned that the current attempts by the Democrats to take ultimate power looks a lot like the communist takeover of Cuba when he was growing up. He said that he loved America because it was a place to escape to. He warned that if communism was allowed to take over here, then there would be nowhere for him to escape to. If America falls to communism, there's nowhere for the Americans to escape to. America is the last place. That was a really powerful powerful statement and kind of a scary idea. That is one of the, I would say, great privileges of the other countries, is that if they screw up, they have an opportunity to escape to America. But if America screws up, we don't have anywhere to go. It's just over. It's just the great human experiment is fall into authoritarianism, and there is nowhere else to go. I'm sure that there's some thoughts that maybe that's a little hyperbolic. Oh, Europe's got liberty, England's got your liberty. Not in the way that America does, and certainly America's liberty is not in the best of shape these days. But I certainly think that we're a lot better off than the European countries. All right, so let's see here. So there was, so if there's nowhere else to go if America falls. So I think that this really parallels the idea with the walkaways, escaping the Democrat Party, escaping the left, and they're taking refuge on the conservative libertarian side of the spectrum. But if they were to subvert our side too, if the walkaways gain power and corrupt conservative and libertarian ideology, then once again, we would have nowhere to flee to. There would be no political refuge. And these two scenarios very much parallel each other. If conservatism, libertarianism falls in America, that's it. There's nowhere else to escape to. And that is, conservative libertarian ideas are what is keeping America. It's what's keeping the liberty idea of America, that is a place for people to flee to that can take refuge from authoritarians. So those two things are happening in parallel, and I'm concerned that the walkaways will collapse one of the last things holding back America from going full authoritarianism. But is that really what the walkaways are planning? Are people who are leaving the Democrat Party, is this really just like a big conspiracy to take over control of the conservatives and the Republican Party? Is that what they're doing? Is this all just a big con? I don't believe that at all, and I don't think that at all. I know it might sound like I think that, but I'm going to explain why I think that. I don't think that this is going to be a purposeful subversion. I don't think that they are purposefully walking away just so that they can infiltrate our ideology and purposefully collapse it. But I do think that the walkaways are genuinely fleeing the left. But as I will be showing throughout the night, I'm highly concerned that they will subvert us by accident. That the subversion of conservative ideology of this side of the spectrum, if there's enough of them over here, if they're taking power, if they're taking leadership roles, that they will accidentally recreate exactly what they were fleeing from. So let's find out why I think that. This is a little bit overgeneralized, but in general, throughout American history, the Democrats, in my opinion, have been the party of control, while the Republicans have been the party of constitutionally protected freedom. Like I said, this is kind of overly general. You can think through it on your own time, but I think you'll find that it's not as hyperbolic as it might seem on the surface. Democrats, party that defended slavery. Eventually they went to war trying to keep their slaves. The Democrats tried to block women's suffrage. They established Jim Crow. They founded the KKK. They tried to block civil rights. And for the last 50 years, they've run every major U.S. city into the ground with overbearing regulations and a perverse incentive model with the welfare state. And the welfare state is just another form of control. So again, overly general, but this idea that the Democrats are the party of control, that's one of the things I want you to keep in your mind as a critical piece of the puzzle I'm trying to build for you here. So for the Democrats, it's always been about control since the founding of the party some 200 years ago. But there was a key turning point in what type of control they had, or what type of control they were trying to implement during the Cold War. Now, Yuri Bezmenov, you guys have probably heard the name. He's been getting a lot of traction in the last few months, and especially at the last week with there was the new Call of Duty game featured Yuri Bezmenov speeches in the trailer, which kind of lit the lefty internet on fire. It is a massive coincidence that happened this week, because I was planning on referencing him in this discussion, which I've been planning on doing for about 2 weeks now. I've been planning on referencing Yuri before that happened. It was just a happy coincidence that he came into more popular relevance with the COD trailer. Also, there's something else that happened this week that also very much lined up with me wanting to do this show, and I didn't know it was going to happen this week, but it helped me do a lot of research for it, so I'll get into that in a bit. But we're going to talk about Yuri for a bit. If you guys don't know who Yuri Bezmenov is, he was a former Soviet KGB agent that defected to the U.S. during the Cold War. While he was here, he appeared in a number of lectures and TV spots where he described what the Soviets were trying to do to America to subvert us. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with with the videos, or at least the references, and I think I might want to do a more full discussion about Yuri another time. I would love for it to be my concern. In my head, I'm like, oh man, like, you got to get to Yuri before he's not relevant, and like the other part of my brain is like, if we get to a point where Yuri's discussion about the subversion of America is no longer relevant to the political conversation, the benefit of that to society will so much outweigh the like sadness I'll have that I didn't do that show in time. So I am sure that Yuri will be relevant for many weeks to come, and that I will get to him while he is still relevant. But like I said, we'll do a more deeper discussion on him another time, and probably watch some videos, which I don't have any of his clips queued up tonight, but I'm going to run through some of his quotes. So in general, what Yuri was describing, this was back in the 70s and 80s, was the culture war that we're seeing now. Certainly there was culture wars throughout the decades after World War II, and basically what Yuri was describing as to how the Soviets were trying to subvert America was that these culture wars were a direct result of that these wars against traditionalism and the classic American values was intentionally done by the Soviets as an effort to destabilize America. He described how the Soviets were subverting America through, among other things, the education system, and that the goal was eventually to create an entire generation of Americans that would have been subverted with the inability to reason and have a general disdain for America. So this is what Yuri described. The intent from the Soviets with the subversion program was to use the education system to make generations of Americans that did not have good critical thinking abilities, that did not have the ability to reason well, did not have the ability to perceive reality correctly, and that they would have a general disdain for America and American values. One of the reasons why Yuri has become so popular within the last year or so is because all the things that he was describing back then fit exactly with the generation of SJWs that are currently burning down the Walgreens down the street from you. So that's all stuff that Yuri helped out figure out, I'm sure. And at the time, even back in the 70s, Yuri had estimated that the Soviets had been so successful with this program that even back in the 70s and 80s, that there had possibly been as many as 3 generations of Americans that had gone through this subversion process. So if it was 3 generations back then, you throw another 40 years onto that, and, well, we've had quite a few of them. And this is one of the problems that we see. One of the reasons why the universities are such a hotbed for this crazy SJW stuff is because the first few generations that were subverted into Marxism, into incorrect thinking, the inability to reason properly, they were the first generation is now all grown up, and they are the professors at these universities, and they are assisting the indoctrination of the next generations. So that's why that is still continuing to happen. Again, there's a lot of stuff to break down with Yuri. What I just went through is such the teeny tiniest surface level. It's almost a shame that I did it that high of a level. gets a lot deeper. I very much abbreviated a lot of the ideas that he went through, but I think that was enough to kind of get through what we need for tonight. So the key takeaways is that Yuri describes a process where through the education system, the perceptions of every American are so thoroughly warped that they are unable to come to rational conclusions about reality. That the people that this has been done to, that have been subverted like this, it will have been done so completely that they will be unable to use logic and reason, even on facts, when they're presented with facts that clearly show that they're wrong or clearly show a state of events that they happen in a certain way. There's a lot of evidence for that this sort of thing happened, and I'll get into some real world examples of that in a second. But even when they're presented with facts and evidence, their logic cannot comprehend it, and they would still not be able to figure out the reality properly. So we see this with basically the entire BLM movement. BLM movement started with an absolute lie. Hands up, don't shoot. That it started off with that. They wanted it to be true, and they got people going with that. And it was a false reality that these people got their brains locked into. Then we had 3 investigations. It was 2 state investigations and the Obama DOJ investigation into the shooting. All 3 investigations came back with the exact same thing. It did not happen the way they said. It was not innocent getting shot in the back. There was it wasn't hands up. He was going for the gun. It just the evidence, the facts and the evidence show that reality happened in a way that hands up, don't shoot never happened. BLM burning down a couple $1 billion. 5 years later, a couple $1 billion. BLM is burning down cities based on that lie. They've been presented with all of the evidence, all of the facts, and their brains simply reject it because they have broken reasoning through this process that Yuri described. So they just cannot figure this out. And Yuri, in one of his speeches or discussions, he actually said that this was so thorough that even if you took somebody who was a Marxist and believed in communism, thought that communism was a good thing, even if you took an American communist to the concentration camps in the Soviet Union and showed them the horror and the death and the starvation and the abuse and the authoritarianism, he said that you could do that with an American communist and they still would not believe, even when they were seeing it with their own eyes, they still would not believe that communism was wrong or that it had a problem. Interestingly, though, Yuri says that the only thing that might get through to them was the boot crashing down upon them. When these people are being sent to these broken people that are not able to perceive reality, when they're sent to the camps, finally, is basically what Yuri said. Then possibly when they find themselves in the Marxist communist concentration camps, then they realize, oh, this is reality. But Yuri said it is nearly impossible that they would notice or be able to recognize that before it was too late, before they found themselves in the camps. Okay, so let me check out chat here. Hi, Thundra. Let me see what YouTube's got anything going on. Okay. Alrighty, so I want you guys to kind of keep that in mind for the rest of the night. This will be the next takeaway is that what Yuri describes is that these people that were subverted, that their logic is broken, they have wrong reasoning, wrong thinking, and they're not able to perceive reality even when facts are put in front of them. And the only thing that can maybe get through to them is when it is finally too late and the thing that they created comes to destroy them. So keep that in mind. What Yuri is describing is creating generations of people who are unable to rationally perceive and interact with reality, and who will only realize the error of their ways when it's too late, when the jackboots come from them. When I start discussing the walkaways, you'll notice a pattern. The pattern is that all of them were canceled at some point. All of them are harassed before they walked away. It's not that they suddenly had a burst of rationalism, that they suddenly realized the facts before them, and that made them realize how wrong their ideology was. It was a burst of fear. It is the fear of the monster that they helped create that was now coming for them. It's exactly what Yuri described. It was not until now getting canceled is the 2020 version of getting sent to the gulags in the 60s and 70s. It's a little bit different, but it is basically, in my opinion, it is a perfect parallel with what Yuri described. It was not until the thing that they were supporting turned on them that they realized it. So these modern day Marxists, they do not realize, or maybe Marxist is a little bit too much of a slur for the walkaways, but certainly the entire Democrat Party has a undercurrent, a theme of Marxism. I mean, certainly there's parts of the party that are overt. I'd be willing to concede that the bulk of the party is moderates, but their moderate ideology has in it threads of the Marxism. So these people, again, today, they've only walked away. They've only broken with the party after they realized, oh crap, the party's coming for me now. It's exactly what Yuri described. So let's see. So in Soviet Russia, what Yuri was talking about is that when this happened, when the party came for the believers and the believers realized, oh crap, I just supported a thing that's coming for me now. Back in Soviet Russia, that wasn't really a problem, as Yuri described, that they would be disposed of. In SJW America, we don't do that. So we don't just remove those people from society, which means that we still have to deal with them and their broken reasoning. So the fact remains that we will still continue to have entire generations of people with broken minds, that we don't have anywhere to put them or get rid of them because we're not Soviet Russia. Minds that are incapable of rationally perceiving and interacting with reality, who have, all these people have not suddenly realized the great logic of conservatism, but again, like I said, they've become scared that the left was coming after them. That they aren't realizing the logic of conservatism. They're scared of the left, and they ran over here. And Yuri describes this process of subversion as irreversible. Once you have broken someone's mind at that level, there is no way to get it back. Again, you can't show them facts. Maybe there's a way to retrain them. I don't know if I don't think the Soviets actually tried that. I think the Soviets just got rid of them in other ways. But that is what Yuri's described, is that it's not, once you have people who have wrong reasoning like that, they don't quickly return to actually having correct perception of reality. He says that these people would be permanently unable to have a rational understanding of what reality is. Being that Marxism is ideological, or is the ideology of control, it is my opinion, that after World War II, that's when the shift in the Democrat Party happened, when the party of control was the natural place for the subversion to take place. So Democrats, like I said before, they've been the party of control from the start. And then after World War II, being the party of control, that was a natural place for Marxism to take its roots in. And they were the natural party to absorb these subverted Marxists that wanted to have a more authoritarian ideology put in place. So all of these people, Marxists, the broken reasoning people, they would have ended up in the Democrat Party. I don't think that the right would end up with a large concentration of these people, but that's not universally true. Dyer and I have had some discussions about this that I think we had some on air maybe around last year this time, when we talked about Fuentes and some of the alt-right stuff. I think that the alt-right, Thank you very much, Slowpoke. Slowpoke says, for $2, thank you. Another YouTuber described it as well. Basically, these people are nothing but useful idiots, true believers to the faith, and they'll be blind to what awaits them until the end when it's time to get rid of them and they can't understand what's happening. Yeah, so that's basically Yeah, that's basically what the point of them is. That they're the useful idiots to bootstrap the revolution, and then once the revolution happens, you got to get rid of them. One of the things that Yuri described is that these broken minds will think that the communism and the Marxism will lead to this, happy, fun, rainbows utopia, and when they see that it's not that it is authoritarian regime, that they will be very unhappy about that, and that's when the Marxist leaders after the revolution would have to get rid of them. That's why we see after every single, without fail, every single Marxist revolution that there's ever been, there's always a giant purge of people once the revolution takes control of the government, and you got to purge those people out. But because of just how geopolitics happened with the Cold War and stuff in America, and the Soviet Union collapsed, we are left with this subversion, this subverted culture, but there's nobody to exploit it. The Democrats are trying to figure it out. The new progressives are figured out that there's kind of this fertile ground for useful idiots that they can maybe take control of. And so it's still a danger to the population, to America, to have this large population of easily subverted useful idiots with wrong reasoning. But until recently, it wasn't necessarily being used by anybody. But I think the communists and the Progressive Party are starting to get through that. So what I was saying though is, Darren and I have had the discussion that I think where you get the alt-right, the identitarian supposed alt-right, the white nationalist type of a thing. If you look into their ideologies, past the fact that they're racist, their economic policies are communist or collectivist in theme. And what we think happened is that there was such a large there's so many generations, such a large population of subverted people, of people that were susceptible to some kind of collectivist ideology, that the progressives and the Democrats and just any international communist groups didn't get a handle on all of them. So there was still kind of this, it was kind of like unformatted NPCs. So you got this big group of unformatted NPCs, and some of the more enterprising racist white nationalists took advantage of that, and they now have a big stock of unformatted NPCs that they can pull over to their side and get them. It's very easy to program them up with white nationalist communism. It's just as easy as doing that with whatever the SJW identitarian nationalism is. It's really just a very small thing that you got to flick, but it's basically the same idea. And so that's why I think that to the extent that there is a white nationalist right, I think that's where it came from. That's my opinion as to where that came from. Is it's just these leftover subverted people, just because there's so many of them. So let me run through chat here. Hey Timberwolf, do you want to do me a massive favor? There is, on my timeline, I tweeted it out like maybe 3 days ago, but I've also been tweeting a lot in the last 3 days, so you'll have to really dig back far. I would really appreciate it if you could find a video that I retweeted. It was a TikTok video of a girl with green hair, and she was explaining her walkaway story. I wanted to go find that before the show, but I did not have time. If you would be so inclined, I would appreciate it if you dug through my Twitter and found that. It should be about 3 days ago, but it could be in that range. But it'll be a long time ago. There'll be a lot of cute foxes in there, though. Okay, so
be gone from me, you soy boy beta cop. Wow. The transaction is complete.
Have some capitalism to subvert this Russia propaganda.
Thank you very much, Timberwolf. Timber gave $30. Much appreciated. He gave $30 to have capitalism that would subvert Russian propaganda. You gave me a handout to subvert Russian communism. Thank you. I appreciate it. How it's just I just want it to like show her. It's not that it's a TikTok video. It's just like a video that happened to be on TikTok. Just calm down. All right, so let's see here. So I kind of done some setup here where I have described how America's culture kind of got into the state, kind of the really broad strokes of how we got the Democrat Party to where it's at. And a lot of the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to set it up for you that this thing that's happening now, this current political turmoil, the SJW stuff, the cancel culture, the identitarianism stuff, that's all not new. It seems like it's new. Some people think it's new. I'm sure a lot of you people realize that it was, it's been going on for a long time. But what I'm trying to set up is that this has been going on for decades at this point. We're coming up on a century, actually, of this sort of stuff that's been going on. It's been growing in the universities. It's been growing in the Democrat Party. And it is it's not a new thing. And that's what I want to set up. It's not. That's the takeaway from this section, is that this is not a new thing. Let's see here. So, like I said, I don't think that the right has a big concentration of these people. A little bit on the identitarian, white identitarians, I guess if you want to consider them on the right. I don't really do, but I guess we have a few of them. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you choose a random Democrat, that it is highly likely that that random Democrat is subverted in the way that Yuri describes, that they would have some kind of Marxist root in their ideology. Maybe they're not overt Marxist. I mean, maybe if, again, you get these moderates, these, Karen type people or whatever, they're not going to have overt Marxist ideology, but if you analyze, what they believe, you can probably trace some Marxist roots out of it. And universally, if you pick out a random Democrat, you will probably find that their ability to rationalize reality is broken, that it's not highly functional. That's how we have the media so easily able to just tell overt lies over and over and over again. CNN last night puts on fiery but mostly peaceful protests. There we go. I almost said the right thing. Fiery but mostly peaceful. There was an article today that came out for Jacob Blake, the guy in Wisconsin who got shot by cops and is responsible for the recent set of riots. Report came out today that he had a knife in the car and that he was holding the knife when he got shot. And the headline was, other than the knife, he was mostly unarmed. Or he was otherwise unarmed. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, other than the knife, he was otherwise unarmed. What reality are these people living in? But they know that their readership is on the left, and that the left they'll just absorb that in, because they cannot rationalize these things. They'll see that and be like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Because certainly if they looked at that and said, hey, that doesn't make sense, we wouldn't have the current problem we've got, where half the country, hopefully a little bit less than half the country, is pretty much on the left. They're just fine with what's going on. So certainly the last thing I just said, that the ability to rationalize, if you pick a random Democrat, that their ability to rationalize reality is broken. That last part is so true that it's basically a meme that the Democrats can't perceive reality, and that they will just follow anything. That's where the NPC meme comes from. There's these memes about these headlines I was telling you about. That's all a part of this. The idea that the Democrats, the left in general, has a hard time perceiving reality is so well known that it's a meme. So that's the takeaway from there. So back to the walkaways. After I set all that stuff up, I think it's highly likely that these walkaways have broken reasoning. They just walked away from the Democrat Party, and we just went through all the things that entail having been on the left. I think it's statistically probable that most of them will have a broken sense of reasoning, that they will have wrong reasoning when it comes to reality, that they won't be able to properly perceive or interact with reality the way that maybe one of us would. And again, I think that the only reason why that any of them have walked away is out of fear that the monster that they created was coming for them. So I've laid out that the walkaways are perfectly described by Yuri, that they probably still have broken reasoning, and that the only reason they left and realized that the organization that they were a part of, the only reason why they realized it was bad was because it turned on them. So what does that mean for us? Well,
obviously it means, as I said earlier, there is going to be and there already has been, a large influx of broken-minded, wrong-reasoned people entering our big conservative tent. And I think that's a very dangerous thing to have in your tent. Don't believe me? How are the Democrats' tents faring with all of those people in there? We've got 100 cities are burned to the ground over events that never happened, and that's just for starters. Some of these walk-awayers are probably not lighting the fires for themselves, but as I'm going to be going through here and describing, they're the ones that helped grease the wheels for all the stuff that's happening now. And they just figured out, oh crap, maybe that was wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have been greasing the slippery slope for my entire lifetime. And then 5 minutes ago, when they came for me, I realized, oops, I was wrong. I'm a conservative now. I'm one of you. I'm one of you guys. I'm helping you out. It's like, okay, like, thanks for helping us out for 2 seconds. You built this Leviathan that's coming for us now. I guess we'll try and fight it together. But after we're done fighting it,
all you can
we're gonna have
talk
to have a
about
talk.
is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Well, thank you very much, Timberwolf. Timberwolf found my tweet, I believe. Thank you. I don't know if I can't actually click on that. Can you Skype that to me or put it in chat? Which vid chat's in? There we go. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. We'll watch that in a bit here. Okay, so thank you very much, Timberwolf. So I just want a quick recap on, and I've been doing this kind of like a lot of back and forth on the recap verbally, just because I don't have a lot of, I don't have any visuals, but just to kind of, again, I want to make sure I set this argument up correctly, because again, my goal for this video is that we need to be very cautious of these walkawayers. We need that to happen, but we have to be cautious of what that means for the future. Least they subvert us. So the recap, the 3 main points I want us to take away from all the previous stuff I just said. The Democrat Party has been the party of control, the party of authoritarians for a very long time. This is not a new thing. This has been the Democrat Party for centuries, at least 2 of them. The second point is that the walkawayers have broken minds, generally, and an inability to rationally perceive and interact with reality. And it is believed, as per Yuri, that this condition of inability to perceive reality is permanent, that they cannot change that, or not change that very easily. Third point would be that these walkawayers only realized that they were wrong when their ideology turned on them. This would be, again, the example would be getting canceled. It wasn't that they came to rational conclusions and naturally, realized, wow, conservatives, maybe they do have something figured out. No, they only came over here when they got chased over here by their own monster. The monster they helped create chased them over to our side. It's not a principled position. They came over here out of fear. Now, that doesn't change the fact, that doesn't change that they're over here. It doesn't even matter why they're over here. If they're over here pulling the lever for Trump, that's great for the short term. Again, this video is more about the long term, the next 2 decades, the next 3 decades. What do we do with these people after we make it through the current political crisis? So we can see this problem of having, I guess a big influx of the potential problem of a big influx of subverted ideologies coming into the conservative tent. I see this as a very big parallel. The walkaway movement's a very big parallel to the fleeing from California. California has a literal walkaway. Maybe it's a drive away or a U-Haul away in California. The effect is so common that it's a meme. Californians vote in oppressive regulations. The regulations make it impossible to live there, and they move somewhere else, like Texas. And then they bring their failed ideology with them and eventually ruin those cities too. They run those cities into the ground. Look at Austin. They implement an authoritarian government. That government comes for them. It scares them. They're not capable of learning, and then they do it again. So California, that's what I'm worried will happen with the entire concept of conservative ideology, of libertarian ideology, is the walkaways. It's just like Californians. They will come to our tent. They will not have learned why they left the previous tent, and then they will set up the exact same things that they ran from last time, and they'll ruin our tent. That's what I'm concerned about. Again, we see that playing out. There's very concrete examples of that with the Californians fleeing California and ruining all the conservative states. Let's see here. So because this is so common, again, this is not speculation that this could happen to the concept of conservatism, because there's so many observable facts of them doing this in real life to these cities. So what I'm proposing, what I'm scared of, is that California is fleeing from Texas and ruining it. The Democrats will flee to the conservative side and ruin it too. This all stems from their inability, the Democrats' inability, the left's inability to have rational thoughts and perceive reality and understand cause and effect. They cannot figure that out. They have never been able to figure that out. We talked about this, and I'll reference this again later in the show. We talked about this a few shows ago when I did the Unity 2020, that the planners plan. They only know how to plan, and the more their plans fail, well, that just means you need more plans. So that's what the Democrats do. The Democrats, the left, they're planners. It doesn't matter if their previous plans failed. Their previous plans failed probably because, Republicans bad or something. So they just need more plans. Every time their stuff fails, the solution is more plans. That's what I see. That's what I'm concerned happening here, is that they just have no ability to understand cause and effect. So, and another coincidence, like I said, there would be another one. I knew I was going to be doing this show about 2 weeks ago. I had decided I wanted to have this show on the roster, talking about the walkaways. And it just so happened that last week, Tim Pool basically did an entire week of his podcast with different prominent members of the walkaway movement. He had 4 nights, 2 hours each with a different prominent leader of the walkaway movement. And that was perfect for me to use as research for tonight. And so that was nice. Thank you, Tim. It was also very hard for me to watch because these people absolutely infuriate me. The walkaways absolutely infuriate me. I strongly dislike all of them. I will get into that in a second here. Thank you, Timberwolf. Okay, so some common themes from the walkaways. So there's several different groups that I would consider to be part of the walkaway movement. Now, there is a particular organization called Walkaway, but there's other groups and other kind of members that maybe aren't directly a part of Walkaway, but they are people that came over from the left to the right, supposedly. Let's see here. So common themes from all of these people is that, and I get this from looking at the interviews of these leaders that I was telling you about that were on Tim's show. There's lots of testimonial videos just over the years. I hear different leftists. I was on the left and the left left me and I came over to the right. All of these, generally as a rule, is that these people that walked away, they think that the radical left is new. They think that the reason why the mob turned on them, that the things that led to that are new. This irks me to absolutely no end. Some of these people had noticed towards the end of the Obama era that the radical left was getting a little too radical, and it started coming from them. Some of them noticed it during the last 4-ish years of the Trump administration. As recently as 2 years ago, some of them are. But they all noticed it very recently. The left left me, as I said, it's a very common saying among them. But is it true that the left left them? No, I don't think it is. I think, personally, and I think there's a lot of evidence that supports it, that the left has been radical authoritarian for quite a long time now. Certainly a lot longer than 2 years ago, certainly a lot longer than 10 years ago. Basically, I think it's been like that since nearly the beginning. But the Democrats will take a break from the crazier stuff for a few decades at a time throughout their long and storied history. And sometimes they'll change tactics. I mean, the Democrat Party very man, very cleverly switched from pro-slavery to creating the welfare state. Oof, yeah, you think through that a little bit. But, it's a change of tactics, but it's not a change in motive, and the motive is to have control over people. Doesn't matter how, we just want to control you. That's what the Democrats say. So, let's see here. So, I think it's been like that the whole time. If they want to call what's currently happening radical, I mean, it's different, but I don't think that this idea of having these authoritarians running around wanting to control other people's lives, I don't think that that's new. I think it's different now, but I don't think it's new. Tim Pool, who, full disclosure, I don't necessarily like referencing him. I hate him so much. But he is a cornerstone to my centrist lefty media diet, as I try to not only look at conservative sources. He's a little bit easier to take there. So he's been saying that the left has left him for at least the last year now. Certainly in like the last few months, he's really gone, wow, I really need to get out of the left. The Democrats are just awful, all this stuff. And that's after he'd been, a lifelong Democrat. And so he points out that this was because of his change of heart is because of the riots. They're wild.
All you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
The left only as far as their loudest voices. Is that the left only as far as their loudest voices? Profound. So. Excuse me. So, Tim points out that the reason why he had this change of heart is because of the riots, and just everything's been going kind of wild and crazy the last few months. The Democrat governors were very authoritarian during the COVID lockdowns. Still have some of them locked down. A lot of really bad decisions made by Democrats. Just a lot of bad stuff the last year, and it's been largely Democrats that were doing bad decisions. Not that you'd know that if you watch the mainstream media. So, but Tim is also pretending that these are kind of new developments, or he was until very recently kind of pretending that there was this shift in the left, that it was new that it was like this, that it was new that they were always lying just to gain power. It was new that they always wanted to control your lives, that it was new that they would send out these lynch mobs for people and this cancel culture stuff. So he was pretending that it was new. And let's see here. So I will give Tim the benefit of the doubt a little bit. I mean, the Democrats, they're worse right now. Like the intensity of what they're doing is worse now. But I don't think that these are new tactics. I think that we saw these same type of riots that we're seeing right now. We saw these exact same sorts of things happening in 2016, leading up to the inauguration. We saw it in Ferguson in the years before. We saw not dissimilar stuff in the Occupy Wall Street movements more than a decade ago now. We've seen all of this stuff before. I mean, the intensity is different. It's happening in more places, but it's the same tactic. It's not new tactics. If the tactic of burning down people's small businesses is bad, like it was just as bad in 2010 and 2015 and 2016 as it was in 2020. Like that's not a new thing, and it's certainly a thing that the Democrats and the left have they've played footsie with it a lot. They've kind of winked and nodded at it. Let's see here. And, Occupy Wall Street. Well, Chaz was crazy. Chaz was new. It was this new crazy tactic. The left. No. Chaz was exactly what we've seen before. Chaz had its ancestry 10 years before in Occupy Wall Street. The Occupy camp was just as bad as Chaz was. The only thing that is different about Chaz is you've got a recency bias with it. Depending on what your guys' age is, and how involved in politics you were back the last decade, Chaz is exactly what Occupy was. All of the rape, the crime, the beatings, the no hygiene, the disease, the filth, the murders, all of that happened in Central Park at Occupy just like it happened in Chaz. There was no difference other than Chaz just happened. Occupy happened before. Maybe there can be an argument about intensity, but it's the exact same tactic. So again, this idea that the left is just newly radical, it's just the last few years, guys, just the last few. No, it's been a long time coming. It's been like this for a long time. Let's see here. And it's the same thing with the riots from all the other incidents over the last decade. I'm sure if you go back I only have personal experience with the last decade. The decades before that, I was either too young or not born yet. But I imagine if you go back, you'll see a similar thing with the riots and the lootings, is that all these incidents from at least the last decade, these were all based off the same thing. They're all based off of lies. Hands up, don't shoot. It's too many to go through, but these are all based off of lies. Just in the last 2 days, we found out that George Floyd, the autopsy came out that he swallowed a 2 milligram fentanyl pill trying to hide it from the cops when they rolled up on him, and that's why his lungs collapsed. His lungs were 3 times the volume that they should have been because he had so much fentanyl in his system that it caused him to drown in his lungs. If he had done that and no one was around him, he was just in if he was just in a comfy lounge chair and he'd taken 2 milligrams of fentanyl, he would have still died. So we found that out 2 days ago. We found out that Jacob Brooks or whatever the hell, Jacob Blake, they burned down for 3 days Kenosha, and we found out today that he did have a knife. He was not an unarmed. Well, he had a knife, but he was otherwise unarmed, right? And then last night they burned down Minneapolis because there was supposedly a police-involved shooting last night, and there's very clear video that the guy blew his own head off. He was in a foot chase. The cops were in a foot chase with him. He was being arrested for murder. He had a gun on him. He ran into a mall, and then you see it in the security footage. This happened just last night. You see it in the security footage. The guy takes the gun, puts it to his head, blows his brains out, falls to the ground. They lied and said that it was a police-involved shooting, and then they burned down Minneapolis last night. That's just in the last 3 days. That's just in the last 3 days. You go back years and years, all of this stuff is all based off of lies. All of it. Let's see here. So I don't think that this stuff's new. I think it's the same stuff that's always been going on. The intensity is a little bit different. It's happening in a few more places, but the tactics are the same. And if the tactics are bad now, then the tactics should have been bad then. Let's see here. So, and I think that one of the reasons why it's gotten, the intensity, the morality of the tactics hasn't changed, but the intensity's changed. And one of the reasons why the intensity changed is because for the last 10 years, the walkaways were the ones helping grease that slippery slope right up until the point where they walked away a few years ago. There is the guy who started the main Walk Away campaign, the one that's actually like the organization that's actually named Walk Away. He walked away in 2017. So what was he doing between Occupy and 2017? Was he probably greasing the slopes for all the stuff that happened in Ferguson? Was he probably greasing the slopes for all the stuff that happened during the inauguration? Was he probably greasing the slopes for all of the SJW culture war stuff that we have going on right now? Was he probably greasing the slopes for cancel culture and censorship? I would imagine that he was. So we'll keep seeing that pattern here, that these walkaways, they think that it's new. They think that this is a recent development, that the left is only recently radical. No, it's really that the left is only recently successful. They've always been radical. And one of the reasons why they weren't successful is, well, they needed more time for people like these walkawayers to help grease the slopes over the years. And then after they got those slopes all nice and greasy, and we slippery sloped right into 100 cities burning, they I got to walk away now. Oops, my bad. But no, let's not forget that they were an active part of that right up until 5 minutes ago. And again, I want to point out, these walkawayers didn't suddenly realize that what they were doing was bad. They didn't suddenly realize, oh wow, yeah, those tactics that we were using in Ferguson and Occupy, like those were immoral tactics. They didn't suddenly realize that. They simply got scared or attacked by the Leviathan that they created. They didn't suddenly come to realize that cancel culture was bad until it came from them. We see this all the time with the prominent media personalities when they suddenly get canceled for a joke they told 30 years ago. It's like, oh wow, man, maybe cancel culture is not a good thing, and they just discovered that cancel culture wasn't a good thing. We see this all the time. I mean, I could go through the names, but you guys know the names. All the media personalities, all the celebrities, where they get canceled all of a sudden. It's like, whoa, maybe we're going too far, guys. That's not a moral position. That's you not realizing what happened until it comes for you. That doesn't mean that you suddenly rationalized that, oh, maybe cancel culture, censorship's not a good thing. No, there was no point in which you had a rational interaction with reality and came to a good conclusion. You're just running for your life, and you'll say anything to make it stop. You'll say anything. Oh yeah, I think this is bad. It really needs to stop, guys, as you're running away terrified. These are not moral positions. These are not indications that you are a good thinker, that you're an intellectual. This is just raw fear. That's all that is. If the walkawayers were capable of the type of reason it takes to understand why they were wrong, they would have realized it long ago before stuff got bad. They would have realized it before they got canceled. They would have realized it and not greased the slopes quite so much and not fed the Leviathan quite so much that it got this bad where it turned on them and came for them. They are walking away now only because the left has finally become effective in some of its tactics, and the dangerous Leviathan that they helped create now came for them. But they were the ones who helped create it in the first place. And I just want to reiterate that they don't actually understand why their ideology is flawed. They just know that they got bit by it. They just know that it came for them. And I do not believe that many of these people, many of the walkawayers, I don't believe that they actually understand why. And I will give Tim Pool a little bit of credit here, because within the last 2 weeks here, for a long time, he was saying the left left me. This is new. The radicalism's new. It was very much pissing me off. Within the last 2 weeks, he actually changed his tone a little bit. And he said, you know what? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's always been like this and I just didn't know it. And now he said, I'm going to just defer to the conservatives and the Republicans because I need to take some stock in figuring out what I believe. This is what Tim's saying, that he realizes, oh, they're not newly radical. They've always been radical, and I just didn't notice it. So Tim might have actually popped himself out of the wrong thinking. Good for him. I hope he has a good time realizing reality now. But that is what I want to see. That's what I want to hear from these walkaways. If you're going to walk away, again, walk away is great for the short term. We need those votes. We need people to stop running with the left there. Anybody who wants to walk away from the left and come over and pull the lever for Trump, do it. I will take that short-term gain any day of the week. But what the point of this show is that after we take that short-term gain of getting those votes, getting those walkawayers over here, the long-term effects of that is what this show is about, is trying to figure out what do we do, how do we manage that in the next few decades. We'll get our win this time. We'll get through the turmoil. We'll get Trump elected in November. But after that, we're going to have some serious discussions and figure out what do we do with these people to get them integrated and to make sure that their ideology is not a danger for us in the future. But a good start is if the walkaways do what Tim just said. Realize that they never knew, that they never understood reality. Have that apotheosis revelation there. That they can do that. That's great. And then critical what Tim said, and whether it was the video that I wanted Timber to pull up, we'll watch that in a bit here. Critical that Tim said he's just going to defer to conservatives because he realized that he doesn't have the ability to rationalize the politics anymore, that he was so wrong that he might have never been right, and he doesn't know how to be right. He actually acknowledged that. I love that. That's perfect. That's what I want to hear from these people. So, let's see here. So the walkawayers got canceled by the left. Does that make them an expert on the left? No. Some analogies to this might be that if you get eaten by a wolf, that does not make you an expert on wolves. If you get shot by Dyer, that does not make you an expert on military tactics. I certainly don't think that the walkawayers getting canceled by the left makes them experts on how the left works. But they sure do. They certainly think that they're experts. This is the part that makes me really dislike the walkawayers. We're going to get into how absurdly arrogant they are and why they piss me off so much. Again, I think that they're useful. They've got their place in the current political scape.
And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Timber says, long game matters more than the short game. Look at Yuri, which you started with. Yep, you nailed it. So Yuri, the stuff that I'm referencing from Yuri, he's talking about the Soviet long con, the long con from the Soviets that was so long it outlived the Soviet Union. And the things that he was talking about 40, 50 years ago are highly, spookily relevant today, because that's how long the game is. And because that is such a long game against us, against liberty, we need to have an equally long game to defend against it, because we have been derelict in that for far too many generations. Okay, so hold on just a second here. Get a drink. All right. So, Brandon. There we go. Brandon. There we go. I knew I'd figure that one out. Brandon Straka. He founded the quote-unquote official walkaway campaign 2 years ago. Brandon thinks that the left left him, and that the left changed after Trump got elected. They got radical after Trump got elected. He thinks that all this stuff is new. This is all new stuff from the left. It just happened recently, as recently as 2017. It's like we just went over. It's not new. It's not new, Brandon. I'm glad that you woke up, but it's not new. Brandon's story is that he started getting harassed for being white about 2 years back. Well, over the course of 4 or 5 years ago, up until about 2 years ago. So Brandon is gay white. He's a gay white man, which that's just a little bit less worse than being a straight white man. It's funny because in his walk away story, he prominently features a lot of these crazy lefty articles about how gay white men are too privileged. And so this is Brandon's story. Is the classic story. You guys probably tired of hearing it. I just went over it 1,000 times. Brandon's story is that he supported the left, and then the left started attacking him. He was greasing the slopes of identity politics, and then the identity politics came from him because he was a white man. It didn't matter that he was gay. Oh no, you're a white man. Identity politics says you are on the lowest rung, the second lowest rung of the oppression hierarchy. Sucks to suck, buddy. And so his story, they came for him. That's his initial video. So he started off his campaign with this 6-minute video about why he was leaving, and the first 3 minutes of it are all about how they were upset at him for being too white and how he had too much privilege. So that sucks for him. I'm sorry. I do feel bad about that. We're all getting flack for whatever your racial group is. You're either the wrong racial group, or you don't have the correct opinions for your racial group. Welcome to the right, buddy. It doesn't matter what your racial group is, you're wrong. So I certainly sympathize with that, but it's not a new story. But he was protected from that because he had the quote unquote right ideology when he was on the left, and he helped grease the slopes for all that identity politics, and then it turned on him. And what did Yuri say? These people only figure out that they're wrong after it turns on them. Now, they don't know why they're wrong. They haven't been able to actually go through the logic trail of why are these ideologies incorrect, but they do know that it is wrong because it turned on them. That's their only metric for it, is they don't know why, but they do know that it is. So he was getting harassed for his skin color. And then in 2017, he officially walked away and founded the movement. Which, again, there's people walking away before that. He just gave it a name and trademarked it, probably because he's a grifter. But allegedly, he did this to help other Dems that were experiencing the same thing and try to be a liaison to bring them over to the right. He didn't understand, and he still doesn't understand how he contributed to the Leviathan of identity politics and why he was wrong. He understands that something was wrong because they came for him, but he doesn't understand why it was wrong. And I really don't think that he understands how he personally contributed to it. And that is because, as we know, his brain is probably broken. He probably has a lot of wrong reasoning that led him to spend the majority of his life on the left. That he was having problems perceiving reality. He was probably very much buying into media lies, not able to properly cope with facts as they came in, staying very ideologically rigid. That's where we get kind of the NPC meme. I think the NPC meme's very much a outgrowth of this idea of not being able to perceive facts. The player character, as you get more facts in the game, you can make new decisions about that. But the NPCs, when they see new stuff, they just say the same thing. They don't have any ability to learn from it. And that's kind of that's the idea of the Yuri Bezmenov stuff. And it's so true on the left that it's a meme, that they're all NPCs, which is why I think this lines up so perfectly with what we're observing right now, is because all of these things, all these different things that Yuri was talking about, all these different things I was talking about, they all seem to fit pretty well with reality. Thank you very much, David Duff, for sending a lemon. Much appreciated. Okay, so Brandon doesn't understand why he's wrong. He understands that something was wrong because they came for him, but he doesn't understand why he was wrong, because his brain's broken, because in his mind, he thinks, so his brain's broken. But in his broken mind, he thinks that the last 2 years, like mid-2017 till now, he thinks that was plenty of time to learn all that there was to know about conservatism. In his interview with Tim last week, Brandon is actually upset that the RNC the Republican National Convention that's going on this week, he was actually upset that they hadn't contacted him to be a part of it. He was on the left for his whole life. They canceled him 2 years ago. And he thinks that in that 2 years that he deserves to have been contacted by the RNC to be a part of the Republican National Convention. Are you fucking kidding me? He thinks that he should be in a leadership position already. After 2 years of bare minimum being awake, he thinks that he should be in charge already. That is the height of arrogance. That infuriates me so much. It boils my blood, the arrogance of these people. On the left up until 2017. And he thinks that it was just in 2016 when all this stuff changed. He was unable to perceive the reality of what he was helping build over the last couple of decades. He's probably in my age range, so he probably was helping from the late 2000s up through 2017. Well, we'll call it Occupy up through 2017. So he had 7 years of greasing the skids for the left, not noticing that ideology was leading here, not recognizing the facts on the ground of how the left was using these tactics, not as effectively, not as wide scale, but they were using these same tactics. Didn't see the previous cancelings, because certainly people were getting canceled before 2017. Certainly that was happening. He wasn't able to perceive any of that. And then they canceled him. And he's the guy who gets eaten by the wolf and thinks he's an expert in wolf physiology. He's the guy who gets shot by Dyer and thinks he's an expert in military tactics. No, you got eaten by your own movement. That doesn't make you an expert in being able to perceive reality. That makes you an idiot who, again, literally cannot perceive reality of what's going on around him to the point that it canceled him. Now, if this had been 50 years ago in the Soviet Union, well, his canceling might have been a little bit more permanent. He's certainly lucky to be in America, or a little. It's a little bit easier to be a communist in America than it is to be a communist in a communist country. But are you kidding me? He thinks he should be in a leadership position already. And this is not unique. This is not unique. His arrogance that he woke up 2 years ago, his arrogance that he thinks he should be in charge already, that is not unique. That is a trend. I'm going to go through a couple more of these guys. It's very infuriating that they think that they are this arrogant. So, and this is what concerns me. So we went over a few weeks ago the idea of the planners when I tore apart Bret Weinstein's Unity 2020 idea. Bret Weinstein is also a walkaway. He was the one who got canceled at Evergreen. Let's see here. What are you saying there, Timberwolf? You quit the show? What do you mean you're quitting the show? You better not quit the show. Okay, so Bret Weinstein that we talked about a few weeks ago, Unity 2020. Which I guess I'll recap that in a second here. But Bret Weinstein famously was canceled from Evergreen University when they wanted him to leave campus because he was white. And that was when he figured out, oh, crap, like maybe there's a problem with this ideology, and he walked away after they came to cancel him. He's the same thing Yuri was describing. They cannot figure it out until it happens to them. They are incapable of understanding that the gulags are bad until they're in the gulags. That's what happened to Bret Weinstein. Bret Weinstein self-admitted. We went through it on the show, was it 3-4 weeks ago? You guys can run back through the archives if you missed it. It was a good show. Bret Weinstein self-admitted he was all in on identity politics, on leftist ideology, light socialism type stuff, social welfares and things like that. He was a big fan of affirmative action programs. He was all in on all that stuff for 30 years. He was all in on that stuff. He was all on the left, all that stuff for 30 years. He was greasing the skids. And being at the university, he was greasing the slipperiest part of the system. He was really getting those going there because he was one of the people that was helping subvert generations of kids. He's one of the ones most responsible of all the walkawayers. The professors are the ones most responsible for the situation that they had to walk away from. And so I notice you. I notice you, Timber. I notice you too, Howie. And in Bret's interviews, he says that he didn't notice that there was a problem with the identity politics until late 2016, and then they came for him by 2017. He had like a 6-7 month head start on it when he realized that the culture at the university was changing. But we went over this last time. Does Bret really expect us to believe that this SJW culture at the universities that only started in mid-2016? We really supposed to believe that? I don't think anybody believes that. It's just like cancel culture. That didn't start in 2017. The entire insanity at the universities didn't start in 2016, Bret. You just missed it because because your brain is broken and you cannot perceive reality. He missed for 30 years that this was happening around him. He missed it. He couldn't perceive the reality of it. And then it came for him. He got put in the gulag. He got put in the cancel gulag. And then he realized it. It's just like Yuri described. But what did we do with Unity 2020? Well, that was 2.5 years ago. Well, Bret's running Unity 2020 now. Bret wants to be the leader. He wants to start a new political party, a new political movement. He thinks he's got it all figured out. He thinks he knows how to fix the politics of the country. He thinks he knows how to fix, all the SJW problems. He thinks he knows how to get the country back on track. He wants to start this Unity 2020 thing, and he wants to be in charge because he's a planner and he's really smart. And because he got eaten by the wolf 2 years ago, he's an expert on the wolf. Because he got eaten by the left, he's an expert on the left now. Absolute arrogance. So arrogant. It's the exact same thing we saw with Brandon. Exact same thing with Bret. I got one more of these. It is over and over and over again. And this is why I'm doing this show, is because my warning is The walkaways are going to end up trying to do this. The walkaways are going to try to gain prominence in conservative movements, in conservative politics, in libertarian spaces. The walkaways will try to gain power, and then they will ruin everything. They will just like Austin, just like all the parts of Texas, all the other conservative states that the Californians flee to, they will ruin it. And it's because they came from an authoritarian ideology. They came from the authoritarian control party. They only know how to control. We went through this with the planners thing with the Brett Weinstein. The planners only know how to plan. Brett is incapable of realizing, maybe I shouldn't plan. That's why I gave Tim so much kudos for the last 2 weeks, where he's realized, wow, I was so wrong for so long. Maybe I was never right. And that's what I want to see from the rest of these people. The rest of the walkaways, they need to realize and or be told that they do not know everything. That it's not just that this happened in the last few years and they suddenly caught on to it. No, they were missing it the whole time. They are so wrong for so long. There's no way they figured it all out in the last 2 years. I think I might be skipping ahead here a little bit, but the kind of quick phrasing I've got for it, the short of hand, is once you walk away, sit down, shut the fuck up, and listen. I do not need this Brandon guy who is a infant of 2 years in the conservative movement telling me how the conservative movement should be working and who the RNC needs to be inviting to prominent speaking positions. No, I do not need that. He needs to sit down, shut up, and listen to the conservative. There has been prominent voices. The one thing the conservative and libertarian side has is we have talkers. We got people like me and Dyer. We aren't real good at getting in the media. I guess this is an alternative media. We don't have good getting into the institutions. We're not good at getting into the education institutions, the media institutions, the tech institutions. We're not good at that. We are good at getting into the talk institutions, though. We talk a lot. There's a lot of conservative talkers, a lot of conservative thinkers. There's a lot of them that have been seeing and warning about this stuff for decades. Decades they've been seeing this stuff. I do not need to hear whatever the hell Brandon Stocka thinks he learned in the last 2 years about conservatives. I don't need to hear whatever the heck Brett Weinstein thinks he figured out the solution to the left in the last 2 years. I don't need to hear that. No one needs to hear that. It probably is wrong. It's probably broken reasoning, because that's their entire lives up until 2 years ago are broken reasoning. And there's a good chance that they probably still have broken reasoning. Back to Yuri. It's not fixable. They might realize that they were wrong because it came for them, but they don't understand why they're wrong. They still have wrong reasoning. So I want these guys, when they've walked away, fantastic. But sit down, shut up, and listen to actual conservatives. There is so much conservative talk, so much libertarian talk. Listen to them. They have the wisdom of decades. You guys just woke up. You just woke up to the Matrix 2 minutes ago. When Neo comes out of the pod there, it's like, what, this is reality. And he's going to sit there, I don't think it's happened in the movie, but it would be like Neo just popped out of the pod and then started telling Morpheus, who is, I think he was human born, or one of the human. Oh, he was telling one of the Ratchet or whatever the other guys were. The guys that were human born. It'd be like him popping out and saying, hey, like, I'm going to tell you guys how to live your life, which he kind of ended up doing. But I'm really chopping up this analogy. I hope you guys see where I'm going with this. But these people just woke up to reality all of 2 years ago, and they think that they've got better ideas that need to be listened to than the conservatives and libertarians and the liberty-minded people, the liberty-minded thinkers that have been discussing this for decades. Is so arrogant and so infuriating. I strongly dislike it. Okay, so let me see. I think I improved some of this. Let me read ahead here. All right, let's see. I'm reading through chat here. So, Oh, just noticed, so should be show for the guy that founded the Walk Away campaign. The branding campaign, I quit this. Show me, give me more notice, so they didn't, was my point. Oh, okay, I get what you're saying. Yeah, okay. Well, let's see here. So, both of these arrogant walkawayers, Brandon and Weinstein, and I got another one too. And again, this is we only got so much time for this show, which is probably already going long, but this is a pattern. This is a pattern that always happens. So these two arrogant walkawayers, they both think that after a lifetime of being unable to rationally perceive reality, that 2 years is enough time for them to become political leaders again. Brett thinks that after spending his whole career fostering this stuff in the universities, that 2 years on the run
and
from
all
the
you
left.
can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Thank you so much, Dave Youngston, for 132, which I know is not enough to get a text chat up there, but if you, oh wait, there you go. Okay. I just have to read it. Let's see here. Dave Youngston for 132, $1.32. Thank you. One of the walkawayers I've spoken with is a black guy who started looking into things after he heard Dem say something he knew was false as he'd been there. He learned that the true party for minorities is the Republicans. They then came after him. Yeah, so I do want to, I think I've tried a few times, but I want to just reiterate. These people...
And all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
I need to do shows without Dyer more often. You guys are generous when he's not here. I'll read yours in a second here, Slowpoke. So I'm going to reiterate, these people are frustrating to me, and I've got a lot of concern about where they go next. What's the long-term effects of having them on our side? And the arrogance of the leaders really frustrates me. I want to reiterate, these aren't real hard, like, universal truths. Like, even if these people have wrong reasoning, that doesn't make them bad people. I do thoroughly believe that a lot of people on the left actually do have good intentions, but their wrong reasoning makes them unable to affect them. So they have moral ideas about what is good. They're just bad at implementing it. Now, certainly there's a lot of evil on the left. We're seeing that in the cities burning down right now. But there is a difference between being evil and just not being able to rationalize something. A lot of these walkawayers, I'm sure, are very good people. I'm sure that they're very nice people. I'm sure that they're probably a good mix of all the kinds of people that there could be. They just, in a political context, and probably not even their fault. Again, this idea of the subversion coming from the Soviets and other communist propaganda, stuff like that kind of got going. It wasn't necessarily that it was the fault of the kids. It was something that happened to them in school. Some people were able to overcome it. Some people weren't. Some people might have varying levels of how broken their perception is. A lot of people are just getting lied to by the media so thoroughly, and they don't know where to find proper information. So, sure, that guy's a great guy. I be friendly with these people, welcome them, and I do want to reiterate that we are the big tent. We welcome them over here. Grab a beer, talk to them, try to convert them. They've realized enough. They've woken up enough to realize that there was something wrong. And that if there was ever a chance that you could actually get them on the right track of perceiving reality correctly, of thinking through things correctly, of thinking through cause and effect of certain policies, now's the time. The thing that is novel about now is Yuri described that the end of the line for these people was the end of the line at the Gulag. That these people, the Soviets never had a concept of what to do with them after, because the after was just disposing of them. We aren't doing that. So really the after, they've had that moment where the left turned on them and they got snapped out of it, realized something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but something's wrong. We don't have a good handle. We don't have a good roadmap from Yuri or any of the psychology or the previous examples of these sorts of things happening. We don't have good examples of what the characteristics of these people are after they've woken up. We do know that they still have wrong reasoning. It's unknown how, if that can be shifted. Again, there might be varying levels to that. So, I am in this particular show. I'm obviously have a very aggressive stance to this because it's very frustrating watching these people. Oh, I just helped ruin the country for 30 years, and in the last seconds before the whole thing collapses, I'm switching sides. That's very frustrating to me, but that doesn't mean that they're bad people. They can be reasoned with. I'm kind of more of a, you gotta have the high energy and the emotion I'm sharing with you guys. But in general, try and help them out, man. That's what we do. We talk to people. That's what conservatives do. That's what the left doesn't do. They don't talk to people. They shut them out, and they send them packing to us. One of the things conservatives do quite a bit is we talk to people. We'll talk to anybody. That's what the right does. We have conversations. Slowpoke says they think they are experts, and yet they didn't see the party about to put them in the gulag in the end. They think they know the left because they used to be them, but it is entirely different monster than they remembered. Well, it's because they remembered the monster as their fluffy pet dog. They didn't realize, oh, wow, this thing will just get sicked on me at any moment. They thought it was the fluffy pet. They thought it was a good thing. They thought all the leftist institutions, all the same leftist institutions that are beating people over the head right now, they thought those institutions existed before these people walked away. They just thought it was a good thing. Like I said, I don't think cancel culture was a 2017 invention. I think it existed before that. I could be wrong. I think I'm at least old enough to remember it before 2017. But a lot of leftists thought that it was a good thing. You see that, again, celebrities are really easy to see the hypocrisy in. The celebrities, they all love the cancel culture right up until it comes for them. And so similar, using that as an analogy for other types of leftist institutions, these people, before they walk away, they thought those were the good things. They thought they were the good guys. And then all of a sudden it got turned on them. And they're like, oh, crap, this was actually bad. But that doesn't mean that you're like logical or that you had like a great instance of intelligence, a big burst of it. It's just, you had the flight response of like, oh crap, something's coming for me. I don't really understand it, but I better run. Oh, look, there's the right. They're kind of nice. Better run over there. Okay. So, yes, the arrogance of these people is overwhelming. That's what really makes me upset. It grinds my gears. They have merely become self-aware of their actions for the first time in their lives when the mob that they supported turned on them. That is the rock bottom, lowest possible level of self-awareness. And these people, not just the two people I mentioned so far, are arrogant enough to pretend that they should be leaders. The mere act of becoming self-aware, the mere act of waking up from the matrix, does not suddenly transform you into a genius philosopher on conservatism. The reason that they do this, the reason why they have such arrogance that they know better, is what I said during the show, during the Unity 2020 show, that these are the planners, that they only know how to plan. These guys came from the party of control, the party of the planners, and because they can't perceive reality, when their plans fail, instead of realizing they are wrong, they plan more. Being canceled did not fix them. It just chased them from the left to us. It just chased them from the left side of the tent to the right side of the tent. But make no mistake, these people are still planners. That's why they're writing books, why they're making organizations, why they want to be at the RNC, why they want to be speakers, why they want to do this and that and get elected to Congress and all that stuff. They still have broken rationality. And they still have an authoritarian streak inside of them. And I think that they will make the exact same mistakes they did last time, because authoritarianism tends to only lead to a few outcomes, and none of them are good. And if they are allowed to gain power on the right, the only thing I see happening is they will create the exact same kind of a Leviathan cultural movement that they'd made on the left. They will just recreate it on the right, and then it will come for us all. And like the Cuban refugee, this time we won't have anywhere to go. So we cannot let them do that. So what can we do? Well, like I said, we should be welcoming to the walkaways. That's what we do. We have conversations. Whether it works or not, we have conversations. It does us no good now to not get their votes. So we should be certainly welcoming in the short term. We need those votes, and we need to pull as many of the troops out of the left as we possibly can. But that said, treat them nicely, have good conversations with them. But we should not be treating them like superstar, brave heroes for doing what they did. Walking away is not an exercise in intellectualism. When you make a monster and it tries to kill you, it's not an act of genius or extreme bravery to run away from it. And it's great for our cause now, in the current moment, if they pull the lever for Trump. But after what they did, after the decades of greasing the slippery slopes for the culture war, pulling the lever for Trump is the least they can do as penance. They all helped create the current situation. It is not brave or admirable for them to switch sides at the last minute, out of fear no less, and help us defeat the evil that they created. Switching sides is the least they can do. Don't pretend like it's something heroic. Don't pretend like it's admirable. Don't pretend like it's a giant achievement. They did the absolute least they could do in switching sides to help us defeat the evil that they created. Let's not pretend like it was anything more than the least that they could do. For the walkaways, my recommendation is this. If there's any walkaways listening to this, I love you guys. My recommendation is this. Once you've walked away, sit down, shut up, and listen. Listening is key. Oh no, am I trying to say silence and censor them? No, not really in particular. I would prefer for them to choose to stay silent and listen on their own, because that's what they should do. These people, these walkawayers, because of the party that they came from, because of the ideology that they came from, they have a strong urge to be planners and leaders, but they are still not capable of perceiving reality properly. So allowing them into leadership or planning positions will lead us right back to the same problem. Let me pull up this this tweet here. My scenes are not very well set up tonight, but I'm sure you guys will forgive me. Okay, so this is a girl who very recently just walked away. And I want to listen to her testimony of walking away, because I think that she did it right, and I would appreciate if all the people that walked away took a note from her.
A message for all the Democrats out there who think that voting for Biden's still a good idea, who are still bullying Trump supporters, who are canceling things for past mistakes instead of learning from them. Aren't you tired? Isn't being angry all the time so exhausting? Isn't grieving all the time so draining? I wanted to understand the other side. I voted for Obama. I voted for Hillary. And I've been pissed. I hated Trump. I didn't understand him at all. I didn't understand the hype. But one day I decided that I wanted to. What I found has been so pleasantly surprising by actually listening to people and not bullying them or writing them off.
That was the key part right there. Actually listening to people. I like where she's at. I'm sure that she's finding a lot of good stuff. And that's what you guys need to find, is you guys need to find the walkaways that are willing to listen, and you can share with them. And it sounds like she's having a great experience with this, and that's great. And I love her approach to it. This is exactly what I want to see. I want to see, you know what? I realize I was wrong, and I don't know what I'm doing. I need to listen to people who do. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see this arrogance of people who woke up 2 minutes ago saying, well, I should be at the RNC because I'm super smart because I realized that the Democrats were bad 2 years ago. No. So arrogant. those are bad people. Those are grifter people. This girl is actually a legitimate walk-awayer. She actually woke up. I'm very happy for her. This is how it needs to happen. So this kind of gives you an indication of when you hear somebody is walking away. This kind of gives you a way of analyzing which kind of walk-awayer are they. Are they one of the ones that are they're just grifting and they're trying to gain power in a different way? Or are they people who genuinely realized, wow, I screwed up. I need to figure out what's real. I need to listen to the people who know what's real. Because here's the other thing. The walk-awayers, the Democrats generally do not like us. They think the worst things about the right. We've seen this for a long time. My earliest political experiences were back when the Tea Party was getting made, and the things that they said about the Tea Party, and that was more than 10 years ago. So again, this stuff's not new. That's where I said before, these are the same tactics that they've always had. It's not new. It's just a difference in intensity. Man, they went at the Tea Party so hard. Racist, sexist, homophobic, all the stuff. White nationalists, all this stuff. So that you got to realize that's what the walk-awayers right up until they walked away, they thought the worst things about you. Again, realizing you're wrong, there's room for redemption here. There's room for forgiveness. That's fine. But the thought that somebody who thought those things about the conservatives, about the libertarians, thought that we were just the banality of evil, up until 2 years ago, and that they think that this Brandon guy thinks that he can just pop up as a prominent speaker at the RNC this year. Whew, man, that really pisses me off. It's really, really frustrating how arrogant some of these people are. But I really liked this girl's video. I'll finish it off here. Key part was listen. That's why I liked what Tim said. I don't know. I never knew what was right. I'm just going to defer to the Republicans for right now. I'm just going to defer to the conservatives for right now, because Tim realized maybe he had always been wrong. Maybe the left didn't change. Maybe it was always like that. He didn't notice it. I think this girl just realized that. That's great. That's fine. Those are the kind of people that we want over here. Those are the kind of people that we can help and they can help us. People like Brandon, people like Brett. They're the grifters. They're coming over here because they couldn't keep power on their side. They got booted out because the left is a little pyramid. It gets tighter and tighter up at the top, and people get booted off. That's why you see in the communist regimes, man, it's life expectancy for being a public official in a communist regime. That's not very good life expectancy there, because it always gets smaller and smaller, and you got to eliminate those people. People like Brett, people like Brandon, they got eliminated, and so they are coming over to our side as a grift, trying to gain power a different way. Don't let it happen. We'll finish off this girl's video.
By actually listening to people and not bullying them or writing them off or calling them names. I found out that most Trump supporters are really nice. Nicer than a lot of Democrats I know. I'm done fighting it. I have a mess.
All right. I hope she has good experiences. Okay, so let's see here. A long show. Let's see what we got on the chats here. Hauser. And some of them, I'm sure, are good people. Thank you, Hauser. Definitely don't clip that. Let's see here. Dave Duff said the guy had been told since he was a kid that the Dems were the party for the blacks. Turns out most of his beliefs were conservative views. And that's something that we see a lot on minority voters, is if you look at what are things that minorities actually value, they're typically more religious. They're typically more family-oriented than your average American family. Certainly that's not a hard and fast rule. But we tend to see that, especially with Hispanics, is really interesting demographic. They're religious at a far higher rate than the average population, yet they vote for the party of abortion at a much higher rate. They vote for the party of anti-Christianity. And we see this, there's a disconnect. Certainly African Americans have been hit pretty hard by the Democrats. The Democrats did quite a lot of work on them in the last century. Well, really since the beginning. Yeah, it's rough. So it's not necessarily, it's not these people's fault if they were educated into wrong reason. It's not their fault that all that they have available for news is propaganda. That's why I said, as frustrating as it is to see the grifters, the regular, your run-of-the-mill walkaways, they're people that you can talk to, and you should talk to them. And if they want to listen, fantastic. Let's see here. Dave Duff, no, we don't want them silent. We want them asking questions, researching, and challenging ideas. Well, I want them researching and questioning. The challenging ideas, again, their ideas, they don't have a foundation for challenging conservative ideas at the moment. I mean, that's not an absolute. Maybe through the Socratic method of, can you explain to me why we wouldn't have, this certain policy for certain things? Certainly that. And I guess I don't even really have a problem with them advocating certain policies. It's just this idea that, again, it's the arrogance that some of these people think that they know so much better that they deserve to already be in leadership positions. I really don't care about I'm not opposed to general conversation about it, but as soon as that turns into, not just that I have a question or want to propose this policy, it's I think I should be in charge so I can implement this policy. No. Sit down. But yeah, I do. I'll say you changed my mind or refined my idea there a little bit, David Duffy. I do think that I do think it's perfectly fine for them to talk, to propose things and discuss through them. It's just, I get, again, this shows a warning about what is the long game on this. If we allow too many of them to grab power before they're ready for it, before they understand what the right is, they will just turn the right back into the left. We don't want that. Let's see here. Okay, so there is a phenomenon with people who have recently converted to a new ideology. So the two other things outside of politics that I've seen this with is with Christianity. I've experienced it personally with friends, a lot of other people, but Crowder gave a really good analysis of it a few months ago when Kanye put out his album that was Christian in nature. And what Crowder was saying was there's a lot of people that were really looking towards Kanye to be kind of a religious leader of like a pseudo religious leader of sorts, looking to him for guidance and inspiration for how Christianity worked and how worship and all that stuff, like what was how to do spirituality and that sort of stuff. And what Crowder said is, he's very excited for Kanye that he found a spiritual life. It's fantastic. Everybody should be very happy for him. But what Crowder said is that there's this fact, and again, I've seen it, you guys have probably seen it as I start describing it, where recent converts will have an exuberance. They'll be very excited. And that's great. They just found this new thing that makes sense to them. It gives them purpose and meaning in their life. Of course they should be excited. Of course they should be exuberant. And what Crowder was saying is that a lot of people that are onlookers to that will mistake that exuberance for wisdom, and they'll go to that person saying, wow, this person's really enthusiastic about their faith. Like, I bet you they know a lot. But it's actually the opposite. It's the people that are less enthusiastic, the ones that have been there for a long time. They're the ones with the wisdom. And so what he was saying with Kanye is it's fantastic that Kanye found this. I hope he inspires a lot of other people to go seek out the faith. But those people shouldn't be looking to Kanye for wisdom. They need to be looking at the people who've been in it for a while for the wisdom, because Kanye's got the enthusiasm, but he doesn't have the wisdom that comes with being in the faith for a long amount of time. I've seen this with fitness community. So this one YouTuber I really like is Every Damn Day Fitness. He does a lot of back and forth response with the fat acceptance community. And he did a great video earlier in the week with a former former fat acceptance advocate who is now working on becoming, she's working to lose weight. She set up a channel, she set up a goal, she's starting to exercise. Fantastic for her. And she's got a lot of excitement and exuberance around it. And he went through and analyzed it, and he was really happy and pleased with how she was doing it. And he was contrasting her to other people that used to be fat acceptance or were kind of in that vein that switched over to saying, hey, you know, I do want to get healthy. I do want to get fit. And it's always very exciting. It's very exciting when you do this new thing. I've done this a few times where I kind of like restart a diet or, you know, restart a fitness routine. It's like, oh, okay, I'm very excited for it for the first few days. And what he does is he's warning against that. He's warning against people watching these channels that these people who are very, very new to fitness are very excited about it, and they got a YouTube channel, they're getting a following and stuff like that. And his warning was not that this was a bad thing. It's very exciting and it should be inspirational to people, but people should not be looking to these channels with these recent fitness people for fitness advice or fitness wisdom. They should be looking to people like him who've been in fitness for a very long time. And it is the same idea where you have this recent convert that has a lot of enthusiasm, and onlookers tend to mistake that for wisdom, when the reality is the people that have been in it for a long time, they're the ones with the wisdom. So I brought up those two examples because it's the same thing with the walkawayers. It's a lot of excitement around certain walkawayers. And I see the same sort of thing happening where the walkawayers, they're the ones getting the interviews on a lot of different places. They're the ones getting the book deals and all that sort of stuff. And you know, to a certain extent, you know, some of them are being asked to, you know, do you want to run? Do you want to run for Congress, something like that, or, you know, doing this sort of stuff. So the concern is, same thing with those previous two examples, is the recent converts from the walkaway, the recently converted to conservatism, they're going to have a lot of enthusiasm for the cause. Obviously, this Brandon guy, he had so much enthusiasm, he started an organization around it. The guy I'm going to talk about in a little bit here, he had so much enthusiasm, he wrote a book about it. Brett Weinstein, so much enthusiasm about leaving the left that he tried to start a new political party. That enthusiasm should not be mistaken for wisdom. There is as I just said a little while ago, there's countless voices, very fantastic thinkers on the right. That's one of the things that the right accelerates on, is good thinking talkers. Not a lot of other institutions, but we got the talk radio down. And those are the people that should be listened to. A lot of stuff that's happening right now. I remember back in the late 2000s, Glenn Beck, back when he had his Fox News program, he was talking about a lot of this stuff. He's talking about George Soros and the different organizations he was funding. And he said, it's going to, they're going to be doing this. This is their goals. It's going to eventually look like this if we don't do something about it. And some of the stuff I'm seeing right now, I'm thinking back 12 years ago, and I'm like, I remember sitting at home watching Glenn Beck talk about this. He said it was going to happen. A lot of conservatives. You got Levin, Hannity, Wilkow, a whole bunch of them. Tucker. You can't name them all, but they have been talking about this sort of stuff happening. They've been warning where the cultural left is going. They have been warning about that for decades. And before them, there was other groups of, there was previous generations of talk radio that and TV shows and stuff like that. There was previous versions of these thinkers that were also warning about where this was headed. Everybody wants to get all over McCarthy. Well, I mean, maybe if McCarthy had been a little more successful, we wouldn't have had the problem that we're having right now. Those are the people that need to be gone to for wisdom. So new, younger conservatives. This is what I worry about: is your younger conservatives, your Zoomers. They're going to look to these fun, exciting personalities that just recently converted. They're going to look to them for wisdom instead of going and looking at, go read a Mark Levin book. That's my recommendation. And that's why I'm concerned about the prominence that some of these recent converts, these walkawayers are getting, is that it's great to be excited. It's great to get inspiration and motivation, but it's not wisdom. It's not a substitute for good conservative wisdom. So don't make those mistakes. Now, again, keep going back to this. Not to say that walkaways don't have interesting perspectives and stories about how the left works. I think that they should be absolutely used as resources, discussing back and forth, talking about better ways to defeat leftist ideology, trying to run through their thought process to maybe reverse engineer the wrong think and see if we can continue with the work of de-radicalizing other leftists. I'd love for them to continue that work. If they want leadership positions, you can get a leadership position in organizations that pull more leftists over to our side and fix them. No problem with that. But let's not forget, again, these people, these walkawayers, they thought that we were the bad guys right up until 5 minutes ago. They thought we were the worst people on the planet. And after being awake for 5 minutes, some of them think that they are smart enough to lead us. It's very, very arrogant, very infuriating. Let's see here. So some other great things that Brandon said. Let's see here. So he one of the things that he said that he wanted to do, one of the reasons why he wanted to have, he was upset that the RNC hadn't invited him to this week's events to be a speaker. He also was proposing that the right should be using more leftist tactics, which is interesting because the leftist tactics are the things that are fundamentally not conservative. The leftist tactics typically involve infringement onto people's rights and their spaces and just their well-being. What tactics is he talking about? There's most of the leftist tactics that are like out on the field tactics of the left. Those typically involve infringement or near infringement of people's rights. And I do not see the need for leftist tactics to be implemented by the right. Maybe it'd make it easier. Maybe we could gain control, but it's just the tactics themselves, regardless of what they're being used to implement, the tactics themselves are fundamentally not libertarian. They're not liberty-minded. They're not conservative values. Let's see here. So he also said that conservatives are difficult to motivate. They don't understand the importance of protesting the way that the left does. The left protests for a lot of stupid things based on lies, is my opinion. So I don't really see a need for conservatives to protest like the left does, which would be protesting for things that are incoherent based on lies about events that never happened. And then on the flip side of that, though, I'm very tired of this idea that the right does not protest. Just in the last year, we've had the Virginia anti-gun protests. We had the anti-lockdown protests. A little bit further back, we had the Tea Party protests. There's protests. We have the 9/12 Project. The Will Cow's got one up in D.C. Glenn Beck's got another one up in D.C. Well, his is the 9/12 Project. There's a bunch of stuff that goes on. The right has a lot of protests, and I would call them more rallies rather than protests. We're more usually gathering together for, in support of an idea rather than a protest, which would be against a policy. Certainly the Virginia anti-gun protests, the anti-lockdown protests, those were actual protests against a policy. But this idea that the right does not assemble is absolutely false. We just assemble, and then you don't have to deal with the billion-dollar consequences for the next 10 years after we're done assembling. When we're done assembling, typically the lot is nicer than when we got there. This idea is very infuriating. And so again, this Brandon guy, has supposedly been a conservative for 2 years, and he still thinks that like the right doesn't protest or assemble. We do. We're not violent about it. But what do they call us? They call us the worst things in the books. The Virginia guys, all of them were white supremacists, including the black ones. The Tea Parties, all of them were all these little old grandmas out there waving American flags for the Tea Party stuff. Oh man, they're just the worst white supremacist, racist KKK people you could ever imagine. The lockdowns, the Virginia stuff, all of that. These people think the worst things about us. They think that when we assemble, the left sees a KKK march. And I don't know, maybe that's why he doesn't think that the right assembles, but we certainly do. That's just one of many countless examples of I don't see him as as a good thought leader on the conservative side. And one of the reasons why I'm focusing in on him is because he is the one that has gotten the branding for the movement. And I want you guys to be aware of these leaders. Again, in general, we need to be aware of all of the walkaways, but we need to be especially wary of these people who are grifting very early on, and very early on they're vying for power immediately. That needs to get shut down. They need to be watched like hawks. And so that's why I'm focusing on him to make sure you guys are aware. Let's see here. And then, the left, the right doesn't understand. The right doesn't understand the importance of protesting like the left does. Does he mean the violent riots? Because the left doesn't often have protests that don't end in violence. Like I said, a lot of their quote unquote protests are usually for incoherent things that are based on lies. So, I don't see that as a very needed tactic. Yep, Timberwolf, be concerned about those seeking power in our movement. I certainly agree. And yes, that is how I protest, for sure. Let's see here. Okay, so we are moving into close to the end, but also into the part where I didn't have time to finish writing, so it's a incoherent smattering of notes. I will do my best, though. Let's see here. I kind of said this before, but I want to reiterate it again, because I'm doing a lot of... I'm upset and we need to be scared, and not scared, but we need to be very wary of these people. But I want to keep going back to, I'm sure that they're good people. Again, there's a separation between the values that these people have and their ability to rationally implement them. I am absolutely willing to believe that a lot of the walkaways that we're going to be seeing come into the movement, that they're all going to have, good values, that they're going to respect human life, respect liberty, and all that stuff, all the stuff that the left claims to be about. But the problem is that they're still just their ability to rationally implement those values is fractured. It does not work. So again, just reiterating that if they got good values, great, they're good people. Just if they are not able to properly implement them, if every time they try to implement them, you got the left right now where their value is racial equality, and the way that they implemented that was segregation. Like I'd say that's a pretty primo example of having a good value and then a complete inability to implement it. And those are the kinds of things we got to watch out for. Let's see here. Okay, so this is the other prominent walkaway I wanted to talk about is Jack Murphy, who wrote Democrat to Deplorable. This guy literally wrote the book on walking away after he voted for Trump in the 2016 election. So this guy, Jack Murphy, he thinks he's hot shit too. He lived in D.C. all of his life. He still lives in D.C. And even after walking away, so he walked away for the 2016 election to vote for Trump. Still lives in D.C. though. Said that he loves D.C. He was a Democrat, strong Democrat, active Democrat in D.C. for his whole life. And then even after he walked away in 2016, it took him up until this year, 2020, to realize how broken of a city that D.C. was, how much it didn't work. In his interviews with Tim and his discussions, he's like, I just kind of realized, like, wow, there's nowhere I have nowhere I can go where they can't get me. Talking about DC. This guy up until 5 minutes ago was helping to craft that DC. If we want to pretend that DC just in the last, that's what the Democrats want to pretend with all of the Democrat cities, that up until 2 weeks ago, up until a few months ago, all these cities were just absolute shining cities on a hill. They were utopian vision cities, like basically like Star Trek incarnate. All these cities, there's no poverty, no problem, no crime, no homeless. They wanted to pretend like that. All of that stuff just changed in the last few months. This guy who lived in DC, which DC has been DC for a very long time. There's the poverty, the situation, the laws, the regulations, the way DC is set up, the extreme wealth disparity, the extreme poverty of the minority community in DC. That has been like that for 40 years or more. And this guy, Jack Murphy, he wrote the book. He's a big walkawayer. So he did not realize that DC was awful and oppressive until this year. And he actually thinks that it changed. He said that that the city changed in the last year. He wrote the book after he walked away to vote for Trump in 2016. He released the book very shortly after that. And yeah, this is another example of peak arrogance where he thinks that he's the expert in what's wrong with the left a full 2 seconds before he left the left and pulled the lever for Trump. Yes, it's a lot of experience you got there. I bow down to the just absolute libraries of wisdom he must have. Let's see here. He said that D.C., where he lived for his whole life as a Democrat, it's so bad in D.C. now. And he thinks that this just happened in the last year or two. It's so bad he's actually planning on moving to a rural area. Now he's... you're either rich
and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Yes, Timber. So Timber says, values through force are not my values, my concern of the walkaways. So I think where you're going with that is when Brandon said the right needs to be implementing more leftist tactics. The leftist tactics, if I had to summarize them quickly, are generally tricks and subterfuge and propaganda. The tactics of the left to bring people to their side are typically employ some kind of trickery. I don't see that, and that's what I mean by that. The left tactics are fundamentally illiberal. They're fundamentally not libertarian. They're fundamentally not conservative. There's nothing. I mean, you can load whatever political message you want into those tactics, but if they're still employing subterfuge, they're not our values. That we cannot implement them. Now, what you could do is it would look nearly the same as if you just told someone the truth. It would kind of look the way that you tell someone a lie. It's you tell them a thing. I guess it's the same tactic, but in our case it would be we'd tell them the truth, and then in the left's case it would be we tell them a lie. But again, the tactics of the left are usually wrapped up in there's a network of lying and subterfuge that creates a narrative. Almost all the tactics of the left are based on narratives that are false, and then they go back to that false narrative as a touchstone for other sub-tactics. Like right now, like the riots. The riots are a tactic that is using the lie narrative that any of these shootings were unjustified. That's the false narrative, and they're using that false narrative to justify the rioting. That's their tactic, is set up a false narrative, use that false narrative as an excuse to do something. I don't see how you could possibly convert that tactic and do something that's usable on the right. I don't like the premise, the fabric of the tactic is morally wrong. There's no place for it on our side. And that's why Brandon's proving my point that they are not ready to be in positions of power on our side. So back to this Jack Murphy guy. He's lived in DC his whole life, been an active Politico-Democrat, and thinks that DC just magically in the last 2 years somehow turned bad. In DC, because the wealth disparity is so outrageous, you are either very wealthy or extremely poor. There is the middle class disappeared in DC first, and then it was the upper and lower middle class disappeared, and it is just the height of wealth and the base pit of poverty in DC. So this Jack Murphy guy, I don't know what he did before, but certainly I'm sure he made a few dollars off that book. He has enough money to leave. He's going to go move to he's got a plot of land he's getting ready to buy. They're going to build a house on it. It's a big old plot of land. He's got like something like 160 acres, he said, about out in some rural country place. He's real excited to move out there just to get away from the city. As the same stuff the Californians do, guys. These people are locusts. They only know how to consume. They consume and consume and consume. They implement awful policies in their cities until the point where they're completely unlivable, and then they just fly off to the next place and go do it all over again. I'm sure I don't know. I mean, 160 is not a lot. Yeah, carpet bakers. 160 is not a lot. I mean, there's a lot of land in America. My thought for how to revise the Electoral College would be to just do a purely based off of land area. Every district would be land area based, and that would totally kill off the cities. That would be how I would redo the Electoral College. Would be set it more towards land area and less towards population density. But this idea, so he doesn't see anything wrong with that. His ideas and policies helped. I mean, certainly he didn't do it on his own. He did not ruin DC all on his lonesome, but he was a part of it. All these people were a part of it. No, you remove any single one of them. If you pop any one of these walkawayers out of, if you were to go back in time and just pluck them from history, any single one of them, it doesn't change anything. This all still happens. No one person set it over the edge. But if you were to remove all of them, then maybe this doesn't happen. So it's not any one person's any one person's fault, but as a group, as a collective, he helped contribute to it. And I think that he should be taking some responsibility for it. I think that the rich leftists in New York and San Francisco and DC, all the cities, you name them, they should stay right where they are. And they certainly have the money and means to help change the politics. And if they had an intention of changing the politics, because they're the ones that bought the politics. They're the ones that bought the politics to be what it was. Let's not pretend that there's not a little corruption in that, and that there's not, campaign finances and all that kind of stuff, especially at the city level where there's a lot less restrictions on campaign finance. So these rich people all did that. They bought this ticket. They don't like where it went, and they're just abandoning the area. It's locusts. And so that's hard. It's hard for your middle class and especially your poor people to abandon the area when the policies become too tough. They just have to stay there and live with it. That kind of sucks. But politically, your move is just, it's just a virtual move from the left to the right. Well, that doesn't cost you anything at all. But my point, I've made this a bunch of times, and I keep kind of going back to these analogies, explaining it a bunch of different ways so that it sticks. Just like this guy is a locust flying from DC that he just consumed. He finished destroying DC, and now he's moving on to the next area to do the same thing. All the people from California, all the locusts from California moving off to Texas and all the other places. My concern is the walkaways will be the locusts of the political sphere, where they've consumed the Liberal Party, the Democrats, the left so thoroughly that's so unlivable there, and now they're flying over to our side. And we need to be mindful that they don't consume us in the way that they consumed their previous party. They made this bed. They should lie in it. Also, Jack Murphy. Oof, man, he's so much smarter than you guys are. He predicted in January of 2020. It's Nostradamus here. He predicted in January of 2020 that there was going to be violence this summer of a political nature, and he thinks he is the most brilliant man on the planet for figuring that out. He's in this interview. He was really talking himself up. He's like, I don't want to brag or anything, and he was real excited that he had called that there was going to be political violence in the summer of 2020. He called that all the way back in January of 2020. I'll just leave that with you guys. I don't think I need to explain why that is really absurd that he thinks that he's a great thinker for realizing that. I'll just leave that with you guys. Let's see here. I think it's about all I had. I think the rest of the notes I already went through. I guess I'll just reiterate that the walkaways are certainly welcome. There's room for redemption. Not having good reasoning does not mean that you don't have good values or good intentions. Certainly we see that a lot. The left will have the best of intentions and the worst of effects. So keep having conversations, talk with people, be inviting, but at the same time, be mindful of these grifters. Be mindful of the arrogance and the hubris. That girl that we watched, it was humble. That's what I liked about it. She humbled herself, that she realized that she was very wrong, like very, very wrong about fundamental things about reality. And she humbled herself by saying, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to listen. And sounds like, wow. And of course she did. Sounds like she found a lot of very nice people to talk to her and explain things to her and have discussions with. That's great. Hearing Tim say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the left didn't leave me. Maybe the left was always like this. That's humbling. That's him realizing, I don't know anything. I missed this for so long. And that he was self-aware enough to realize that his reasoning had been so wrong for so long that it's probably not correct now, and he needs to do a lot of self-reflection to figure out how to make it right. These humble walkawayers, they are gems, more than welcome in our party, or our side of the fence, or our big tent, or whatever it is. Certainly will be great allies in the future. The arrogant ones, watch out for the arrogant ones. Weinsteins, these Jack Murphys, these Brandons, they're out there. And there's a lot of other ones. These are kind of the ones that have branded themselves as walk away. There's a lot of people that are walk away that haven't branded themselves as walk away. Dave Rubin comes to mind, though he's pretty good. A lot of his stuff's based around listening, so I'll give him a pass on that. But anytime the walk away is want to, they want to pretend like they know better than you. They want to pretend like they know better than people who've been conservative thinkers and philosophers for decades. If they want to pretend that they've got supremacy in that, if they think that the RNC needs to be picking up leftist tactics, if they think that after 2 years they are so important, that they are such peak importance that they should be a prominent speaker at Trump's Republican National Convention this week, those are the people that we got to watch out for. And so, like I said, this is short game. Ooh, yeah, we need those votes. Definitely. We need those votes. It's getting those votes now in the short term is worth just about any long-term cost, but that doesn't mean that we can't mitigate the long-term problem of the walkawayers. They will be a problem. Maybe not by intent. And like I said, I don't think this is a conspiracy theory that the walkawayers are planning to come take over the parties. I mean, maybe this Brandon guy is, but in general, it won't be on purpose. If they break our side, it'll be an accident because they don't know any better, and it'll be our fault for not having guided them correctly. Conservatism has failed since the Cold War to get this crap out of the universities. Conservatism has absolutely failed to do that. We've failed to keep it out of the media institutions. The walk away maybe gives everybody a second chance. It gives the Democrats a second chance to realize that they screwed up and that their ideology is leading to untold amounts of human misery. And it gives the right a chance to fix
the problem of our ideological ancestors, our forefathers, throughout the last 70 years, where we just conceded all of this territory in the media and academia and in the government. This is everybody's chance to do it better next time. So let's take that opportunity. Be wary of the walkaways, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if we let it be a bad thing. There's certainly a lot of ways to mitigate the problem. Well, guys, that was wow, I went for a long time. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. Dyer will be back with me on Saturday night. We'll be doing a Dire Wolf weekly news recap. Very fun. And I'll see you guys then. Thank you so much for joining me.